A new report that we detailed yesterday exposing COVID relief funds are being used to push critical race theory. Fox News confirming that liberal states like California, New York, and Illinois used billions from the Democrat-passed American Rescue Act to fund programs emphasizing bias training and equity in schools. One Nation is the organization that broke that story, and their president, Stephen Law, joins us right now from D.C. Stephen, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Not a single Republican voted for the American Rescue Plan, and we were told at the time by the senators that it was literally a matter of life and death. Past this, people will live. But now, as it turns out, there's a lot of stuff in there that has nothing to do with COVID.
That's exactly right, and you're right. The Democrats from the president on down said we absolutely had to pass the so-called American Rescue Plan. We're going to open schools. We're going to fix our economy. And you don't have to scratch very far below the surface to not only find a lot of waste, but a lot of politics. And the organization I run, One Nation, saw these reports about waste, did a little bit of digging, and we found all of these instances, totaling $46 billion in 13 different states, all liberal-run states, where they were using this to promote very liberal curricula on race, critical race theory, and other programs like that. Things that parents would be concerned about, but most importantly, having nothing to do with what the legislation was presented as when it was passed.
Sure, absolutely. And if people remember at the time, the way the impassioned Democrats were selling it is, we want $122 billion to help reopen the schools. That sounded great. We all wanted the schools to reopen, so we figured it's going to be for vaccines, it's going to be for plexiglass, it's going to be for ventilation. It's not ventilation in some cases, Stephen. It's indoctrination.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Exactly. The way we say, they said that they were going to use it to open schools. Instead, they're using it to close children's minds, and it's really a shame. And I think parents are going to be concerned about it, but it's a classic bait and switch that you see in Washington, where the politicians come together and say, we're going to do this. It's going to be good for the country, and we've got to do it now. And it's so urgent that we're not going to actually look very deeply at what's in it. Well, now that we look at it, we're quite concerned about it, and I think taxpayers should be as well.
Absolutely. After you shined a light on it and shared the information with Fox Digital, foxnews.com, the Department of Education, it hit the fan, so they had to put out a statement. They said this: the department is not encouraging the use of American Rescue Plan funds to teach CRT, and any claim to the contrary is patently false. The department believes politicians should stay out of the curriculum decisions that are best made at the local level in engagement with parents, families, and local school communities. So, Stephen, they say you're wrong.
Well, no, that's absolutely false. You could actually take a look at the solicitations they put out, the request for proposals, and they were actively encouraging race-based programs that they wanted to have states come forward with. And the most damning part of it is the Department of Education approved all these plans. So these plans that are now underway that have been funding this activity have the imprimatur, the seal of approval of the Department of Education and this administration. So what they're saying right now is revisionist history.
You know, what's the expression? Never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? This is it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think that's often what happens is that politicians figure that it's time to break the piggy bank and to support a variety of left-wing priorities. And it's one thing if you're funding, you can talk about whether you want to fund, luxury hotels and ski slopes and the other kinds of nonsense.
Which the American Rescue Plan did, right?
It did, exactly right. But now they're also funding politics, and I think a lot of parents are going to be very concerned about that.
And in fact, what we saw at the last election, particularly in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is parents during the pandemic started looking over their kids' shoulder, and they saw what the kids were learning, and it's like, hey, when did they start that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think ultimately that's the moral of the story of where we are right now. I think there needs to be accountability. And the first part of it you mentioned, which is parents looking into what's going on in schools, being involved in school districts and in school boards. But then the other part of it is that we're going to have accountability from the top down, oversight in terms of how this money is being spent and what it's being used for. And that's going to require Congress to step up.
All right. He is the president of One Nation. Stephen Law, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks again, Steve. Great to see you.
Great to see you.